Hi, this will be my attempt to run a parallel video series in English and in Latvian on my experience of living and working in Georgia. So I'm not guaranteeing that it will be absolutely the same that I'm talking in Latvian, that I will talk in English, and it might be that there will be some deviations. So if you understand both languages, then it might be an interesting journey for you and me. And of course, if you understand only one, then then you will never know what was different on the another. So any journey starts with the first step, and I promised this video or series of my stories to be created a while ago. And now, as I had some spot to start, I'm starting it now, and this will be like an introduction to series that I will do live in Latvian every Monday as of June 8th until it ends, but probably by end of July. And for English, it will be available only on YouTube as a recording. So if you're watching me on YouTube, obviously, then I would love you to push the button subscribe and like under the video. That of course motivates me to do more, and is just a good feeling. So would be nice if you share it. Anyway, my story with Georgia started back in 1998, and I got to Georgia because I worked for Procter & Gamble at that period of time, and my boss of my boss, general manager of Procter & Gamble Baltics, got promoted or got assignment to work for a region that for that period of time was called Georgia and Central Asia for Procter & Gamble, and he moved there to be a general manager for Georgia and Central Asia, for Caucasus and Central Asia, and then they decided that they need a sales manager, that they need to establish a Procter & Gamble sales subsidiary or sales team on ground in Georgia and Armenia, and they needed a manager for that subsidiary or sales team. And at that point of time, I was running sales team for part of Latvia, and I got that proposal. But it's kind of funny story how and why me got the proposal. The thing is that when they started to think about what would be the sort of description for the person that they're looking for, obviously they needed somebody with experience in working for P&G, because that's the only way you can get next level assignment. You have to start from bottom in P&G, so they had to look for somebody working in P&G, and all the qualifications that are, you need to be a good salesperson and show leadership and everything. But there was one very specific thing, which was, at least to me, it was presented in a wording: person has to know Russian very well, but shouldn't be Russian by nationality. And that dramatically decreases the places in the world where you can look for that person. So at that point of history, the Baltics was nearly the only place you could look for that type of person within P&G structure. So very good Russian and not Russian. And in Baltics at that point of time, there were probably roughly 10 people, maybe less, working in sales for P&G. Approximately half of them were Estonian origin, was not very good Russian, and approximately half of that was in Latvia. So it was like a very, very tiny bit of people that could have been attracted to Georgia. based on that description. And so I, yeah, and then for some reason, probably Hans-Peter Huyssen, who frankly late Hans-Peter Huyssen, who was general manager of Baltic before, remembered me as whatever it was, like very motivated, energetic, I don't know, whatever, engaged young professional, and I got that offer. I don't know if anyone else got that offer, but I kind of suspect that I was the only person they talked to. And as I said yes, then then I got the job, and I traveled to Georgia for a look and see, and then I returned. So I came to Georgia first time in August of '98, and then August to September. Have to check the passport, but and then I moved to Georgia in November '98. Just for those who maybe are less aware of Georgia, Russia, and all that, whatever chemistry, need to a bit probably explain why this needs to know Russian and shouldn't be Russian was important. So first of all, back in 1998, there were not very many people in Georgia who would speak English. Well, the same as in Latvia, or as in Baltics, as whatever, Ukraine, or you go anywhere in ex-Soviet Union, or whatever, Poland, or whatever. There were not many people who would know English very well. So in order to talk, in order to improve the communication between local distributors and P&G, I mean, that person preferably would know language that is common, which was Russian. So Georgians would speak pretty fluent Russian, most of them, and if you know Russian, your communication would be much smoother. And but due to all the civil wars and kind of nearly wars with Russia and Russia's political interference in Georgia's affairs, they thought that that Russian national, I mean, person who is Russian by nationality, would not be very safe in Georgia. So safer person would be somebody who is not Russian. I mean, probably later on, I will also unveil or open how much wrong that was. But anyway, I got in a way lucky that they thought that Russians by nationality might be in danger in Georgia, and they had a very narrow place where to look for somebody working in Georgia. So I got lucky, and it was very thrilling. It was, I mean, it was like, wow, I'm moving abroad, I'm getting international assignment, and that was so much of excitement around that. And they were really selling me that opportunity, and I don't think I actually even blinked in a way that I even had any second thought. But of course, I moved into it slowly with all the routines and things, because on the other way, it was very new. I was not very long ago married. We had kid. I mean, we were probably in marriage a couple of years, and we had a small daughter, and I never had any experience of working abroad and all that stuff. So it was like, I also was a bit cautious about it. But that was like fantastic opportunity. And yeah, one more thing. It was '98, and back then I was not yet 24. So when I got that offer, I was not 24. When I moved, I was already 24. But when I got that offer, I was not 24 yet. So in very many aspects, I consider Georgia to be one of cornerstones of me becoming adult and mature and grown-up male, whatever you understand under that sort of definition. But I mean, I moved to Georgia in like very, very beginning of me becoming a self-sufficient person with my family and everything, even though I lived outside of my family house since I was 18 and moved to get my university degree. But anyway, it was, much bigger piece of independence that I got, and all the other things around it. So I consider Georgia being a very big part of, and if you know me, or if you have heard of me, or if you know something around me, then, or just watching this, then you can definitely say that big part of what is Martin's Vatsvaniks today is because I have this experience with Georgia. So yeah. So what would you expect? So as this is introduction video, so what would you expect in the videos to come? So I lived on ground in Georgia from 98 from autumn 98 till spring 2000. And I was responsible for Georgia and Armenia. So I lived in Tbilisi in Georgia, and I kept constantly moving to going to Armenia and spending pretty extensive time in Armenia, living in Yerevan a week or 2 or 10 days or 5 days or 3 days or whatever. But I was, nearly living, 20 up to 50% of my time I was living in Yerevan, actually, depending on different circumstances and times. So there is this period that I would love to talk about, and I will be presenting or telling my stories sort of chronologically, so sort of starting from 98 and to this time, but probably I will jump back and forth just to give comparisons between what can you see now and what was it back then, and all that stuff. So I was living back on ground then, and then in spring of 2000 I moved to Poland, and I lived in Poland for a while. But this is a completely different story, due to the fact that there was no social networks or communication possibilities of this sort of time. I started to lose my connections with Georgia. Maybe I kept emailing back and forth to some people with not very high frequency, and I went back to Georgia a couple of times just to visit them, but not much. I mean, I was gradually losing my connection, and it was becoming sort of my memories. And then in 2005, sort of 2004-5ish, I decided that it would be interesting to move to Georgia, and I had an idea about a new business project, and I thought, that's Georgia would be a good opportunity. And in 2006, in very early 2006, I moved back to Georgia, and I lived in Georgia for another 2.5 years till basically very late 2008. I moved back to Latvia again in October 2008. So there is another period of chunk of my life that I lived in Georgia, and again I was responsible for Armenia, and I was responsible also for Azerbaijan. So this is where you would expect some stories of also about Azerbaijan, and of course for the common tourist it might be that those countries seem very, very, very similar, but actually they are very, very different. It's a very different culture. I mean, in small and old countries like Georgia or Baltics, there are actually like big differences even within regions of countries, but still, I mean, Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan are very different culturally and by very different means, and similar again because they still neighbor, and they share a lot of common things as well. So I'm gonna tell some stories of Georgia, and some stories of Armenia, and some stories of Azerbaijan as well, and and then I moved back in 2008, and I kept my consultancy business in Georgia, and for a couple of years actually kept that business alive there, and I kept going back and forth to Georgia like once a month or even more than that for several years, actually, since 2008. I would say up to 2015 easily. That I was commuting pretty often. Now I'm not commuting it that often, but I keep my connections alive, and I keep visiting country several times. I still keep having business projects there, and I gladly go for leisure whenever I have that opportunity. So there will be different intensity of my experience, different periods of time, because 98 was time when all countries of that region were just getting out of crisis created, and we're living through crisis of just recent civil wars, wars between countries like Armenia, war with Azerbaijan, and all that, and internal politics crisis and issues. So and problems with infrastructure and crime and you name it. So that was quite a wild west, at least to me. And then 2006 was very different situation, especially in Georgia. Slightly later, maybe Azerbaijan discovering wells of oil, and that wells actually getting into that country, and Armenia also going through a lot of changes. And so very interesting past, I think, of history of that region. And there will be adventures, and there will be good days and bad days, and funny stories and sad stories that I plan to tell you. As I said, probably will move chronologically. And if you decide to let me know about your questions or something, you can write me an email, or you can drop a comment under this video on YouTube. And and I will try to answer whatever pops up in the following videos, or in my comments below the video, so that we have a bit of communication around it. I'd love if you share your stories, and if you have your experience with the region or something like that. I'd love you to share that. One more thing before I end this introduction video. Of course, you're running out of patience anyway. As I said, Georgia and that region, but mainly Georgia, became a big part of me becoming a person. And I consider Georgia my second motherland. I consider my Georgia as it's my home. I mean, it's my home, some part of me, maybe in a previous life or in other form, I probably used to be Georgian. And there is a funny story that I'm gonna share around my surname and a nickname that I got, a Georgian nickname that I got, and actually a funny story about that. So there is also, I have a surname which is Georgian. You will learn about it later on. So thank you very much for watching this video, an introduction to a set of stories. Hope to keep it up. And see you again. Bye-bye.